I'm Ben Nelson, I'm the founder of Minerva. So Minerva is a reinvented university experience. It's effectively what a university should be. So the way we admit students, which is purely based on meritocracy, means that our students are by far the most diverse student body in the world, both geographically and socioeconomically. 76% of our students aren't from the United States, and the overwhelming majority of our students represent the various socioeconomic classes of the world, as opposed to being concentrated among wealthy students, even though we're the most selective university in the world. Last year, we admitted fewer than 2% of our applicants. We also provide a curriculum that teaches students all of the things that universities say they teach, but don't actually teach. We actually teach students how to think critically, how to solve problems creatively, how to understand effective communications and effective interactions, both interpersonally and cross-systemically. And we do so in a very intensive learning environment. 100% of our classes have fewer than 20 students. All of the classes are fully active learning. They're not lectures. The students participate all the time and apply what they learn. And finally, the students live with each other in various countries throughout their 4 years. They spend their first year in San Francisco, and then they live in 6 different countries over the next 6 semesters. In Seoul, Hyderabad, Berlin, Buenos Aires, London, and Taipei, before coming back to San Francisco to graduate. Provide all of our courses, all of our small seminars via a live video platform where there's a camera pointing at every student and every professor's face. And that way, everything that happens in class, the professor can then go back to and give feedback to the students on how well they did. How well did you address this problem? How well did you debate with the other student? And students themselves can go back and see how they performed. And so when you think about elite athletes, after a game, they go back and watch the game tape. They see what they did well, what they didn't do well. We treat education in the same exacting way. And so students are evaluated in 2 ways. They're evaluated based on how well they perform in class, and they're also evaluated based on the project work that they do. But we don't have tests. And the reason is that we reflect much the way you get evaluated in the real world. In the real world, you get evaluated by other people based on how you interact with them, and you get evaluated based on the work product that you produce. And so we created a university that is similar to the expectations that people have of each other in the real world. So there are 4 key outcome measures that we track and we think are all extremely important. So measure number 1 is effectively within the system itself. If I am telling you that I'm teaching you how to think critically, it actually means that I'm teaching you various parts. I'm teaching you how to evaluate a claim, or I'm teaching you how to make decision trade-offs. And evaluating claims have different parts, right? There are different component parts of each of that. So how do you use statistics? How do I use logic? How do I use reasoning, etc.? So one of the ways that we see that we're successful is we measure how our students perform in each of these small subcomponent parts over time. Right? And so we see if our students are improving across 118 different habits of mind and foundational concepts. And so a big part of seeing that we're successful is if I teach you how to use the concept of or concepts that underlie critical thinking, and I see that you progress with that over the years, I know I'm doing something right. The second thing we do is that we provide our students an external measure called the Collegiate Learning Assessment Plus. It's given to thousands, tens of thousands, now hundreds of thousands of students all across the United States. And so our students perform at a very high level when they come in because they're excellent students. But they're at about the 94th percentile of incoming seniors, meaning 4th-year students, when they're beginning their first year. By the end of their first year, they're at their top 1% of all graduating students in the United States. And so we see that the measure we're able to do in 1 year more than what most universities can do in 4, which is a pretty remarkable achievement. The third thing that we do is we actually survey students themselves and see how they use the habits of mind foundational concepts and what we teach them in their day-to-day. And lastly, we talk to employers. So 87% of our students after their first year wanted to go out and work for the summer. And 100% of those students wound up getting jobs. We went and surveyed those employers of those students and said, how did the student perform? 100% of our students got a 9 or a 10 rating on a 10-point scale. 100%. It's completely unheard of. And over 90% said that they performed better after 1 year at Minerva than they would expect any undergraduate at any year to perform in the job. And so those 4 measures make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. The great thing about what we've done is that every year we update and revise every single session of every single class that we offer. So we learn what sessions work, what sessions don't work, we learn what kind of topics to bring about, we modify the content of what we teach. But probably the most remarkable thing about Minerva is that the core concept, small classes, fully active learning, teaching habits and concepts that you carry with you for 4 years, living and immersing in 7 different countries, having a global student body, all of these ideas were true from the first day, and they're true today, and they'll be true in the future. And so the core concept of what we're doing is still very much the same, even though every detail we continue to improve upon every year. The 3 core things that are easiest to look at for us is number 1, the admissions process, right? And how to actually pick students based on merit as opposed to based on wealth. Second is the curriculum, which is probably the core of what it is that we do. And how do you actually provide an education that gives you the component parts that you can then apply to whatever it is that you study or do in the rest of your life. And third, it's the pedagogical or teaching methods. How do you make sure that your students are actively engaged with the material as opposed to passively sitting in class and just listening? And so content comes in 2 ways. And number 1, when we teach the first year where you learn the various component parts, you have to use content to illustrate it. And so we pick and choose various content areas to provide students some context. But then when you get into your 2nd, your 3rd, your 4th year, that's a much more content-oriented education. You focus on particular majors and concentrations. Now we teach more at the intersection of fields as opposed to strict academic fields that are less related to the real world, but it does illustrate particular content. If you're interested in natural science or computational science, business, arts and humanities, social science, we have various tracks, 30 concentrations in all that you can choose from. But you continue to apply what it is that you've learned both to your major course of study as well as to electives to explore other areas. And so content is a major part of what we do, but only after you have the basis of systemic thinking. We don't believe in paying for lectures. Lectures are effectively reading a book out loud. That's really all a lecture is, right? And so sometimes somebody reads it very effectively. So you want to have students listen to that. But you can record it, right? And there are thousands or hundreds of thousands of lectures online. And so when we find good ones, we tell students, listen to this as preparation material. Every class you have to read your material before you're ready for class to get engaged. Sometimes you read, sometimes you listen to a lecture, sometimes you work on a case study, you work on a project, but that's all homework, right? That's all the idea of what you do before you actually engage in the class. And so at Minerva education, you both consume the content and work with it before you come to class. And then in class, you apply it, right? So you both consume the information and do the homework outside of class, and then in class, you apply. And that's really the secret for education, to make sure that students are engaged in it and that they can apply so that they can cement in their memory. But it's something that almost no other university does. Well, I actually have had many educational experiences that affected me, and probably the one that is most profound is the one that led me on the course towards Minerva. It was a freshman class I took about the history of universities, where I learned about Benjamin Franklin's view for what he thought the University of Pennsylvania should be, which was my alma mater. And I realized that Penn looked nothing like what Franklin wanted it to be. Franklin wanted a university that would develop the whole person, that will get them ready to make decisions of consequence in society that affect the lives of others. Not to just teach particular subject matter, to blend both the theoretical and the practical and the ornamental, as he called it. And that set me on this lifelong mission to fix higher education, to be much more true to the classical sense of the American university as opposed to what it is today. Oh, it's been great. I mean, people have been very engaged, very interested in engaging in conversation and talking about experiences, and I hope that I've given them some kind of frameworks that they could come back to their institutions and can push the concept of reform. One of the benefits of meetings, we're awash with information. And much like a university, whose job it is to curate information, it's the same thing with a conference. Conferences should be selecting those individuals and those ideas that they want to begin conversations around. And coming into an event like this, when you have well-selected ideas that are at the core of conversation, allows you to think in ways that you wouldn't normally think, allows you to challenge and broaden your perspective. And I think that's why conferences like this are so important.